How was your house heated?
We had a fireplace in every room that was run with coal, soft coal. We had a coal house in the back where it was kept full of this fuel. And in addition to that, in the main hall downstairs, we had a large stove that ran up to the upper floor hall, where there was a place where we stood over to get dressed in the morning when it was cold. And the house was always snug and warm. We had.
Tell me about how did you keep meat?
Well,
you didn't have any electricity.
As soon as it was cold enough, we had hog killing weather. And they would any number of hogs, butcher them, and make sausage out. They would clean the entrails to the hogs and then stuff them with a machine with the sausage we made from the meat. The hams were hung in a house and smoked, and the best hams that were ever made, bar none. Then, in addition, out there in the smokehouse, we kept sauerkraut. We would cabbage cut up and made into sauerkraut that we keep all year, and all kinds of foods that were there for all during the year.
Now, did you have an ice house?
Yes, we did. We had an ice house too, which we filled with ice during the winter when it would freeze over on a pond. And we had a pretty good sized pond, and it was stocked with fish, so we could catch fresh fish, trout, and bass, and fish whenever we wanted it, so that we had available not only the fresh meat that we took from killing lambs. We had lambs all the time. We had this storehouse of bacon and hog meat that was hanging up in the smokehouse, and the fish. So all really that my father had to buy currently, like we go to the shop every week to buy our groceries, but when he would go, he would usually bring back something he couldn't get on the farm, and that was a steak. And that was a rare occasion when we had steak to eat. But other than that, everything we had was at home. We had our potatoes, all our vegetables.
Did you bring the kids back any candy?
Oh yes, and the first thing we did was to meet my father at the door. I remember my younger brother, Esther, saying, "Daddy, apples, candy?" And he always had something in his pockets. Not only my father, but when his brothers who lived in town came out regularly to sit under the trees and chat with my father, they would all bring us something. So we were pretty well spoiled.
Tell me about school, first about when
school.
You and your family went to elementary school.
Yes, we did. All of us went to an elementary school in Caskie, which was about 3 miles away from our home, between Hopkinsville. And after we graduated from, it was also one-room school, two-room school. We walked to that school most days when the weather was good, and many, many days when it wasn't so good, and we had to plow through snowdrifts. However, if it was really bad, we had ponies we could ride. And at school, we'd tie our ponies up and feed them and take care of them later. And that we had at that place in Caskie, we had.
Some of your siblings were kind of went in pairs to school by grades?
Well, it seems that we did pair up in two, because in the first place, as for me, my sister Irene and I went through all the same grades together because when Irene was ready to go to school, she was ill and missed a whole year at school. So we started out together and graduated through the 8th grade together and then went on to high school. The same was true of Myra and my brother Robert. They were paired and graduated from high school in the same class. And then my sister Louise and your father, George, were another pair. They went through school together and 1 year of college, and Pat and Forrest. So in that way, we kept very close to each other, special brothers and sisters.
Tell me what you had to do before you and Irene, before you went to high school, to get ready to go to high school.
Before we went to high school? Well, when we finished our 8th grade in grammar school, in order to enter the high school in Hopkinsville, we had to pass a 2-day examination in every subject we had studied. And fortunately we passed because we had pretty good teachers. We didn't have to take any SAT tests or anything like that. But I guess this was similar.
You didn't have FCAT?
No.
No FCATs?
No.
Tell me about some of the courses that you took in high school, and then you had to go into town, into Hopkinsville for high school.
In high school, you mean? Well, I suppose the regular courses they had now, we had, I think Latin was required, maybe one other foreign language, French, Spanish, algebra, and all the way up the. Strangely, my math courses were taught by Miss Julia Arnold, who was the aunt of the man that I later married. And she also taught Latin, and we had, and my sister Irene and I were on a basketball team. We were both very, very short. You can't imagine why we would ever play basketball. But in those days, they didn't go up quite as tall as they do now. And we had a pretty good girls' basketball team.
That was in high school?
High school.
In high school. Now, when you were in high school, did you have a car then?
Well, yes, we did, but I don't know how the earlier ones got to school. I really can't tell you. But I know by the time I was going to high school, we had an old Ford car.
What year was that?
I started high school in I was 12 years old, 16.
You started high school at 12 years old?
12 years old. That's right.
And that was 1916.
Mm-hmm.
And so was it your father's car?
Oh yeah, well I don't know how we got hold of it, but anyway I didn't drive it, but Frank, my younger brother, drove it, and Irene, they both knew how to drive a car, and I didn't at that time, although later on we did.
Okay. Tell me about your religious affiliations in your family.
My mother was Baptist. My father was Presbyterian. I don't recall him going to church every Sunday, but the children sort of gravitated towards my mother's church, the Baptist church. And the elementary school where we went in Teske was right next door to the little church, Baptist church there. And when I was 12 years old, I joined that church, as well as my sister Irene, and we were both baptized on a cold fall morning in a little creek near the home.
Tell me about your brother Bob. It seems that something...
About what?
Your brother Bob, when he was probably in
Bob.
elementary school.
You know,
he
Bob was such a pretty boy. Well, all my brothers were pretty. I can't help but tell you that. They didn't... But anyway, when during the wintertime, we used to gather around the fireplace in my mother and dad's sitting room. And she would regale us with stories and entertain us. And we looked forward to that time after we'd have our dinner when the family would all get together. Well, it seemed one night my brother Bob was missing from the family group. We didn't pay much attention to it. We thought it was around the house.
How old was he then? How old
he
was
was about 7 or 8 years old, I guess. Finally, in the middle of our fun, having our fun, Robert comes in the door, expecting us to be all surprised, you know, and, hey, Bob, you know, very casual we are. And he looked around and he said he'd been gone all day long. You thought, where was he? He says, well, I see you got the same old cat.
Now, did he get in a lot of trouble for that?
No, but he did get in trouble once with me because in coming home from somewhere we'd been in the buggy, you know, the buggy has springs in the back, and we had to open 2 gates from the main highway into our driveway. And in order to do that, one of us kids would get out and open the gate. So this particular time, I got out to open the gate, and I had my hands where the springs could hit it, and it chopped off practically all the ends of my fingers. So Bob was driving the horse that we went through in, and when my father heard about my hands being injured, he gave Bob an awful licking, and I'm sorry to this day it wasn't his fault. It was my fault.
Did you tell them it was your fault?
Oh, of course I did. Many tears were shed. Mine mostly. I don't think Bob shed any tears. But anyway, he got the licking.
Tell me about pigs that were being born on your farm, something that some of you kids did.
While we were in high school, the girls that we were in school with loved coming out to the farm on the weekend. Well, there was always some excitement going on around there. There was something to watch. If it was a little foal being born, or the lambs being born, or the hay being put up in the hayloft where we could ride the wagon up and dump us in. Always some excitement, so you could understand why they wanted to come out and visit us. So one weekend, a couple of the girls were out visiting with us, and we went down to the barn to look things over, and I expect we went up in the silo where they had stored the corn for the season. And then we went down, and it seemed that one of the sows was giving birth to pigs. And we watched this performance through the cracks in the barn floor. And of course, that is a bad thing to do when that event is happening, because the mother gets excited. And later we learned that as we watched and probably giggled about it, she had eaten a couple of her little newborn pigs. So it was a sad time and a lesson we learned.
Did you get in trouble with Papa?
Yeah. Well, he didn't know.
He didn't know about it. You didn't tell him.
He didn't know we were up there watching all that.
Oh my goodness. I remember my grandmother very well, and I know she was very good in